Hey, it's Udi, and today we have the Cubase tour. This is the first session, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Cubase in a very practical way. I'm not going to cover everything that there is to know about Cubase. Cubase is really huge program, and there are so many menus and options and settings that it will take us forever to cover. What would be really useful for us is to actually do some music, and I'm going to show you here just a preview of a track that I'm working on, but then later we'll start from scratch and we'll create our own tracks and MIDI files, and we'll do a lot of stuff. So let's get started. I'm going to show you what we have here. So this is Cubase, and the main window here, this is the main area, is where things are really set. I mean, this is the project. So as you can see, I've colored things. You don't have to color it. Here I have my drums, for example. Okay, and we have some other files here. These are these are actually samples. So as you can see, I can zoom in, and these are samples that I have, and these are MIDI files or MIDI parts that we have. Double clicking will get you into the key editor where you can create notes. Of course, I don't want to ruin things, but you get the idea. And every track will have its own line here. Okay, this is the track, and I can have some controls here. For example, I have the mute or solo buttons. I have other information. For example, I can see that this is a stereo, and for every track we also have an editor here where I can see the inserts and the sends, and we'll talk about that not in this session, but we'll dive into that in the next session. So this is a typical track. This is a typical audio track where you can see the inspector on the left. You have the inserts, you have the sends, you have routings, the fader, as you can see here, and that's a typical sample or a typical audio track. But here we have a MIDI track, and you can see the MIDI parts. We have the instrument itself. This is actually an instrument track, so I can click this and see the instrument. This is massive, and here I have another audio track where you can see that I have a bunch of plugins inserted here. If I want to insert another one, I can just click here and select any of the plugins that I have. So that's the basic idea. And as you can see, I'm just arranging my music here on the main area, and this is where things are getting built. One very important thing to know, that we have, of course, all these options here, but we'll cover most of them. We'll see how they work, but don't get that in your way. Right clicking, or you get so many options here. Don't worry about that. We'll get it sorted out throughout this series. So this is just a quick glance over a project. And what we'll do next is I'm going to create a new track from scratch, and every session that we'll have, we'll add more, and we'll continue our exploration. So let's get started with the tour. And just before that, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me, and leave comments, because I'm actually answering every comment. So if you have a question or you want to say something, just do it. Leave a comment, and we'll get connected. So let's get started with the Cubase tour. let's get started right at the beginning. And this is how Cubase starts. So you have the splash screen, you see all the VSTs loading in. I'm using version 10.5.2 or sorry, .20, which is the latest for now. And this is the hub. So on the left here, you have some kind of a browser where you see news and stuff, updates, new features, video tutorials, very cool, very useful, so check it out. And you have quick start tutorials, and you have your trials here. So that's the left side. On the right, you see all your latest projects and some templates. So I'll leave these templates for you to explore. And we want to create a new and empty project. So for me, and again, I'm not going into all the details right now, but for me, I have the default location and I have prompt for project location every time. So I'll create this, and let's create a new folder. And this is very important because we want to have all our files in the same place. We'll call it Cubase Tour. Create it, select it, and that's it. So I'll show you in later videos how you manage your files and everything, but for now that's enough. And the very first thing that I would do is Control S or Command S, or go to File, Save, and we'll call it Cubase Tour. And now we're ready to go. So what do we have here? So Cubase is very simple in in one way, but very complex on another. So the idea here is that you have your project area on the center, and around this you have your tracks and some added information over here, or tools, like for example you'll see here the mix console, editors, sampler, chord pads, and so on, but I'll show you all that in a moment. Here on the right you have another zone which is more related to your VSTs, to your plugins, your media, and some other stuff like the control room and meter. So let's leave it at media, and I think the best thing to do is just create a new track. I mean, that's the beginning. So very easy. Just right click on this area here, or you can also click the plus here, add a track, and you'll be asked what kind of track. And since this is just a tour, I'll just create an instrument track, and we'll explore sampler, MIDI, and all the other types in a later video. So for now, let's create an instrument track. And you can see that we can select the instrument. Okay, so I have lots of instruments or synths or whatever, but we're going to use just the in-house, just the included plugins. So let's create some drum grooves. And in Cubase, we have Groove Agent, SE. There is a full version of Groove Agent that you can purchase, but this is pretty good. And for me, it's more than enough. So I'm going to use this, and we can select the outputs. And right now we don't have any choices, just the stereo output, but we can route this track somewhere else. We can also create several tracks in one click. So that's sometimes useful if you already know that you want to create few instrument tracks. And you can keep this dialog open, but we don't want that. Add a track. So we have an empty sampler. This is what we have, and Groove Agent deserves its own video, which I'll do. But for now, this is how it looks like. You have pads, and these pads will host samples, most likely drums, but not necessarily. And you have all these different places. As you can see, you have 8 different groups. So it's more than just 16. It's just way more than that. So now let's load something. We have, again, lots of options here. For example, I can go here on the toolbar and I'll get a filter, and you can see that I can do this. I mean, just select a content set or use categories or whatever, and I can just, or as you can see here, I have all the drum setups that we have in the program right now. And I can also click here and load stuff, but let's do something else. I'm going to close this. Another way would be to just click here on this label. So this is another way. Load program to selected slot, and here we have the set. So let's see what's new in the laser beans. This is new to 10.5, I think. And yeah, let's see what we've got. So we have minimal and let's see this one. I really like it. So in Groove Agent, you have instrument and pattern. So the instrument will be just the samples. Right. And as you can see, we have different groups here, and we have even tones. So it's just a sampler, basically. But another thing that is important, if I'm selecting any of these samples, for example, let's select the kick, you'll see all the information here. So right now we are editing the kick, and you can set the volume, you can set the panning, you can set tuning here, and you can even route it in different ways. It's really a lot of stuff that you have here. For example, I can set a filter, I can set my amp settings here, and I have sends and inserts, and it's a complete sampler. And again, we'll cover this in a different video. So for now, right, now it's really too much information. So the other thing that is important here is that we have patterns. So you can load pre-configured patterns, and this is very useful and very cool because, for example, let's hear this one. Right, so it's a bit too loud, but let's do this. I can just click and drag it to my project. How cool is that? Right, so right now I have this pattern here. Something else that I can do, let's remove that, and I can go and select some other types of drums. For example, let's find something else. Again, this is just a filter. Don't worry about it. You can see all your tracks here. I have, I mean, a lot of options here, and everything is really good, very useful. And you can actually purchase more packages or more sets as you go. Let's see. Let's just select something. For example, we'll go minimal, and we'll take this one. Cool, so let's do that. And as you can see, it says 127. Let's ignore that for now because my BPM, and this is another something for our tour, the BPM is set to 120. So let's get that one. And that's it. So right now we have one track, and this is it. So now it's time to talk about this track. I'm just ignoring everything else. I have my track here, and this is my zoom, and I can zoom also like this, and this is my track. And I'm ignoring everything else because I want to create another track. Let's do that again. Right click, add an instrument track, and again I can do this in different ways. Previously what we did was clicking the plus here, and now we're right clicking, instrument track, and we'll select one of the synths that are included with Cubase. So I'm going to take Retrolog. So this is going to be Retrolog, and Retrolog is a really good synthesizer, and I'm ashamed to say that I didn't really cover that in any of my videos. Shame on me. So now let's select something. Let's see what kind of categories we have. As you can see, this is a selector here. We have the Cubase selector here. Okay, this is the Cubase menu, and we can talk about this in later videos, like the read and write automation, side chaining, and all that. But we also have this drop down here. It just does this almost the same. This is really an extended filter, but for now that's good. And again, lots of buttons, lots of things. Don't let that confuse you. And as you can see, we can find a lot of information about the sounds that we have. And let's try and find something, some kind of a bass. So let's hear that one. I don't like it, so we can just flick through. Okay, so a lot of yeah, let's try this one. Okay, cool. So now we have a track here, but it doesn't have any information. And right now we're talking MIDI, right? So this is MIDI, and this brings me again to show you some other stuff. So I can load MIDI patterns here, or I can write them down. And as you can see here on the right, and we'll explore that maybe in a different video. We have presets, we have loops and samples, VST, instruments, presets, and a lot of other stuff that we have. So for example, we can go and loop and samples, and we can search for something specific. And these are all the packages of loops, samples, MIDI files, and whatever that is available for you. So as you can see, let's do that. Let's get something here. So I'm gonna just click here. I don't like that one. That's cinematic stuff. So again, loops, and go to kaleidoscope. Yeah, we can take that one. So I'm gonna click here, drag it over to my project wherever. So I can't really drag it to my MIDI because this is audio. It's a WAV file, so I can't just put it here. So a new track will just automatically be created. So there you go. And I could have done it differently, and I'll show you in a moment. So this is what we have. But before we continue, and I'll show you how you actually edit the MIDI files here, or the MIDI tracks, I want to show you something really important. And this is the inspector here. So for each track, I'll see a different information. I mean, I'll see the specific information for that track here on the left. So if I'm selecting this Groove Agent instrument, I'll see all the information that is relevant for that track. So this is just the track information. If you're looking, okay, how do I make this quieter or louder, panning, offsets, and here we have something really important, which is the routing. I can route this to inputs and outputs, and right now again it's too early to explore all that. And we also have chords. For example, we can have chord pads. Well, and doesn't mean anything right now for drums, but I'll show you something in a moment. Let's go. Here you have the mix console, and so let's see something else. For example, for this I don't know, call it a stub. Let's hear it. Very cool. So it's way too loud for me, so I'm gonna get this down. And now let me show you something again. We are in a tour, so just having fun here. So I'm going to engage this sampler control, and I'm going to drag this down to the sampler. And now what we have is a new track, and this is a MIDI track, so I can actually program this track, but I'll show you that in a moment. Now let's play something. So I'm actually playing you know, notes that are related to this sample, because this is a sampler and this deserves its own video, of course. So we'll do that also. Now it's time to create a new MIDI track or a MIDI information. So this is how it's done. So I have a few ways to program my MIDI. First of all, the most obvious one is to just record something. So let's do this. I'll show you. We'll set the metronome here, and I'm going to activate the count in. So this is how it's done. You can see here that that's the metronome and count in. And by the way, you see this E, this is the editing button. So every time you see this this icon, this E, then you know that it will open up an editor. So I'm going to click this, and these are the settings for the metronome. See how many options we have. This is way too much. Okay, so you can explore that, and we have different patterns, or sorry, different signatures that you can have, and it's really way too much. But maybe if you're going to be, or you are an advanced user, you'll appreciate that. So now what I'll do is I'll just record. Okay, so that's my pattern here, and now it's probably not in time, right? So what we can do is double click, and this brings us to editors. So in Cubase, as you can see, we have the main project here, but we can engage editors. And for MIDI, we have quite a few different editors. For example, this is the key editor, and if I'll double click the drums here, it's still the key editor, and I see all the information here, and I can draw in the notes. Just clicking. Okay, and I'll show you this in the other track. So let's do this, double clicking here, and this is the MIDI information that I punched in. So let's try and do something here. So what do we have? First of all, we have our information here on the left, which I'm not going to talk about much, except for example the quantization. And here you can set all kinds of information about how to quantize this. Quantizing means adjusting the position according to some kind of setting. If you want to have some swing, for example, and you can see the lines move, right? If you know what swing is, you can appreciate that. So I can set the swing, I can set the grid here, for example 16th, and you can do this also here on the top. So let's do this. First of all, we have the note length and we have the quantization. So I want 16ths, so I can match that. It means that every time I double click somewhere, it will create a new note, and that note will be 16th, and it will also be quantized. I mean, the grid will be 16th, and this is my grid here. And as you can see, lots of options again, but I'm snapping to the grid right now. But I can click this and just drag it freely. Okay, so let's keep it like this. And now we're all set. So let's delete that. So back to business. We want to create this this MIDI track to be aligned. So I'm going to quantize all these notes. So I have few options. First of all, I can just drag them and just do this, or I can select and click Q. And the way it works is really, I mean, there are a few ways to look at this, because we need to know a few things before Cubase can actually do this accurately. And we have some smart quantizations here, and a lot of information about how to quantize and how to set the grid. So since this is just a tour, I'm just mentioning this. So right now this is what we have, and I'm going to quantize all these guys. And I think that's pretty good. I'm just gonna set the length here, and I just want a couple of bars, and as you can see we have an extra bar here. So I'm gonna close this, and I'm just gonna click here and drag. So this is what we have. I'm going to just copy this over here. So I have a few ways to do that. Right clicking will not get you much. So right clicking will get you a toolbar, a quick toolbar where you can select your pointer here. You can have scissors, glue, muting, and all that. So that's the most common things that you would want during editing. But if you want an extended secondary menu, you have to hit Shift. So I'm hitting Shift and clicking, and there you go. We have an extended menu here. And you have copy and paste and everything else, and lots of other tools. And of course we're not going to explore all of them. So that's one way to do it. Of course we have the edit menu over here, and I can click copy and just paste, Control V or Command V, and there you go. So another way to do it would be maybe to just Control D, duplicate. That's another good way. And now I want to set the markers here. I want to set my my loop area. So one very quick way to do this is just select whatever and clicking the P. And now we have a loop. So what I did just now is, as I hover over the top part of this ruler here, I can click it and it will turn purple, and now it's a loop. Okay, so that's what we have for now, and we have this this little loop here, and we have a sampler. But I want to show you something really cool. So let's do this. I'm going to just delete all this information here, and what I want to show you is that I can create drum loops differently. I can use the drum editor. So that was just the key editor, and now let's use the drum editor. So this is drums, and as I click this track here, since this is a MIDI track, you can see that I have this here, no drum map, and I can click this and load drum mapping. So if you have a real drum, real electric drums or whatever, you can load your setup here, but you can create drum map from instrument. Let's do this, and now I'm going to create just a MIDI part here, clicking the pencil here, the draw. And this is another very important information here. So I just have one bar. Okay, clicking this will give me one bar, and this relates to something else, to how I'm selecting things. And as you can see, I'm here selecting a bar, but that's my grid. I can select beat, or even quantize further, or adapt, but we'll get to that. So right now I have one bar. I'm going back to my selector here. Double clicking this now, after I created my drum map, will give me a completely different editor, and this is the drum editor. So see how fun this is going to be, because I have all the pads, all the things that I have here on this instrument. As you can see, I have my patterns and I have my instrument, and this is the kick on C1, for example. So you can see C1, C1, that's the same. And so if that's what we have, it means that I can just punch in the notes here, or the samples, right? And what we can do is, again, go back here and just select this one bar. So I'm gonna click P, double click, and what I want to do is I want to just get rid of the metronome, and I want to solo this one. So I'm gonna solo this, and now double clicking, and of course let's put a clap on the 2 and 4. Very, very easy and very useful. So one important thing about this, you can select those and you can set the velocity. So I can do it individually right here, or I can punch in, for example, 60, or I can set this in the instrument itself. So here you have this icon here, clicking this, and I can go and say, instead of every time I draw in this clap, I want it to be not so loud. This is the one. You can see the volume here, so I can set it to something else. Okay, and now let's get this one back to the default, which is 100. Of course, we can add in some hi-hats, double clicking and dragging. But this is way too loud, and again, I have a couple of ways to do it. So just remember, whatever you change here will stay with you. That will be your instrument. So you have to remember that. And I can add some other stuff, like a shaker somewhere, I don't know. And we have, let's see, and you can just audition stuff like this. Okay, this one is cool. And now I can just click this, Control D or Command D, and I can go on. And let me show you one more technique. So let's say that we want this last one to have another kick here. Okay, so now I want to join them together, so I can just select both of them and click the glue and glue them together. So now they are just one big part, and I can do this. Right, and I've muted this stub because I don't need it anymore. I'm using it in my sampler here. So I can just mute it, or I can even delete it. And here I have my my retrolog, which I didn't really use. Right, God, that was very loud. So we can just select something else here. And again, lots of information and lots of options, and I can actually search for arpeggiator, for example, ARP. I don't know. Let's see if they have something. Let's see this one. And again, it's way too loud for me right now. Let's play. Right, and I can punch in things, or I can just play them. So another way for us to create that part would be double clicking. If you double click anywhere in a track while you have this loop selector here, it will create the entire part here, extending all the way. I don't need everything here, so I'm gonna just do this, and I can just and right, and I okay, you get the idea. So let's sum up what we have here. So this is the main area. This is where things are set. This is our project. We have our tracks here, and we have on the left our inspector, which will show us all the information for each and every track, and we have lots of information about them. And here on the right, we have the our write zone, where we have all kinds of loops, and we can see our instruments here, and we'll talk about this in a later video. So that is it for now. So now you know how to create those tracks, and you can start working, you can start doing stuff in Cubase. I know we didn't cover a lot, but that's just the start. So let's continue this on the next video. So what we'll do in the next video will be to dive in deeper into Cubase, and we'll start again from scratch and build up a new track. And while I'm doing that new track, we'll just learn how things work. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. And again, if you like these videos, if you're enjoying my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell and like this video, and please leave a comment. What do you think we should do? If you have any question or anything at all, leave comments. I answer all the comments, all the questions, and if I've missed something, well, just leave another comment, and I'm pretty sure I'll get to that. I'm checking my comments every day. So I mean, I'm checking your comments in my channel every day. So again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll actually start from scratch and go even deeper. So thank you. Bye bye.